Smile. Welcome back to Milmo Wood from the beautiful North Wales. Today's video I'm going to make something I've never heard of yet again. It's another event's display. It's called the Sailboard backboard. It's made up of 3 parts. Centre piece, which is the largest, and then 2 side parts going down in size as we make them. There's a big arch in them. It's from a repeat customer, which I'm really happy about. It's always good to have repeat business from someone. It means they've got confidence in your business and in yourself and your work. So I'm going to make it out of 12mm MDF. We need to make some feet, we need to hinge them, we need to be able to pack them. Let's get started. So in order to cut the arc, I'm going to use a router. I've got my Trend, not sure, it's a V10 or something like that router. I've got a little rebate cutter in it, and to make the arch I've made a rough and ready jig, I guess. So just some very thin 3 or 4mm plywood. I think it's 4mm plywood. I secured that to the base of the router, cut a hole so that the bit can come through. So I've measured from the edge of the router bit down the board, drilled a little hole. That's going to be the pivot point. I'm going to secure that to the MDF with a screw, and then all being well, we can cut a lovely arch on it. I'm not sure how well you can see that, but I've marked a centre line in the end of the board, used a straight edge, set square, and further down I've marked the pivot point. This board's going to be the biggest, so approximately 6 foot by 4 foot. In the UK, these 8x4 boards are 120 centimetres by 240 centimetres. But luckily I measured this, it's slightly over, it's 2 centimetres over, nearly an inch bigger. So I need to adjust my jig on my router. Next thing is to fit the router jig. I've aligned the hole in my jig with the centre hole that I've put the screw in on the board. Now we don't want to pop through the board, back of the board's fine. We can put some filler in that hole and it's not so important. The front of the board needs to stay pristine. That should be sufficient. I'm now just going to push on the router until the bit hits the MDF through the hole, and that has zeroed it out. I know the MDF's 12mm thick, so I know that the router bit needs to go down 12mm. And we can measure that on the router with the little measuring arm on the other side. I'm going to drop my little measuring arm to zero it onto the gauge, and then we know it's just got to go down 12mm. Now, if you've never used this method with your router to cut an arch, it's really quite simple. I must admit, when I first did it, I cut out small circles rather than this large piece. But actually, so long as you're careful, watch where your cable is, and cut with confidence, it's really quite simple. But safety first. If you're not confident doing it and it doesn't feel right, don't do it. Find another method to do it. You could use a jigsaw with a fine blade, but you'd have to sand it out a lot more, and the finish, I think, wouldn't be quite so good. So let's crack on with the router bit, look how we do it, and maybe give it a go if you haven't tried it before. Okay, we are cutting MDF. I wear a mask regardless, but MDF, carcinogenic, wear a mask. So that's the first pass. I'm now going to drop the blade so it cleanly cuts. And I'm going to have some help just to support the end of the board. So what I decided to do with Steph helping me, my wife helping me, Milmo Creations, go and check it out on Facebook and on Instagram. Really good at sewing, embroidery, artwork, etc. I came in from the side, flipped over, came in from the other side, just to cut the centre out so it'd be easier for her to take the wood. We had a mishap and a piece did break off the front of the screen. One of those things, I'll figure a way of doing it. Might end up having to use this side as the front end and fill the screw hole in. Disappointing, but there we go. If I had a third trestle, obviously it would have been supported on that third trestle. Perhaps something I need to invest in. Other than that, the cut went really well. I'm really pleased. Just goes to show how simple it is once you make a rough and ready jig. So the section that was cut off from the first piece can now make the smallest piece out of the 3-piece backdrop. I'm just going to trim it all off and get ready to cut another arc in it. So to cut the arc on this piece now, I've adjusted the hole in the jig, brought it forward. It's about the same distance from the bit as the width of the wood that I've cut. I've put a pilot hole in for the screw or the pivot point. Just need to make sure the leads are all safe and out of the way. I'm also mindful that the MDF is on some trestles and I want the trestles to be out of the way while I'm cutting, because the last thing I want to do is try and cut metal with the woodworking bit. So let's get this screwed in, and again, safety first. What I've noticed is my screw holes too low down. I'm going to have to bring it up a couple of centimetres. So I'm just going to zero my grout a bit onto the wood. And I'm going to measure the distance I need to move my pivot. I'll just start the screw hole off. I'm just going to check again. Okay. So I'm pleased with that, nice. Now to cut the third piece. We finished the backboards themselves, and now we need some feet for them to stand on. I cut this out of some of the offcuts of the sheet material, so I've used 2 sheets of 8x4. I've designed this for the legs. I've effectively created a template. I will be using this one though to cut out all the legs that I require, and I'll be doing that with a router. You could just cut them all out with a jigsaw if you wanted to, just sand them back. But I've done the first one, I've sanded it nice and neat. and I'm ready to use that as a template to do the other feet now. Just to get the edges of the roundovers, I've just used roller tape for a shape, and then the bottom I used a bin. Now you could use a compass or something similar, but why not use what you got to hand? I've made them 10 centimeters thick here, and then just join the straight lines up with the curved edge of the bin and the tape. Now to cut the legs out, I've already drawn them out, but just to show you how I did that, I place the original one, the template on, drew round it, and then I place that around the board, trying to get as many out of that piece as I can. Now what I need to do is cut proud of the line. So I've got all the different pieces. I'll stick these together and use a router. I'll show you that just now. So I've now chosen my smaller 1/2 inch router. I put a edging bit in with a bearing, and this will help follow the template that I've made and cut the rough cut pieces to shape. It's going to be a lot of dust, mask and ear defenders are necessary. It would be a good idea possibly to do this outside. Fortunately I've got a filtration system which will be on full. I've got my template. On this, cut of the bearings on the bottom. You can get them with the bearing on the top, so the template needs to go on the base, and then the rough cut material will sit on top of that. So I'm going to use double-sided carpet tape. Stick the template on. Make sure we've got some good adhesion. I said the template needs to be on the bottom because of the bearing. And then we need to set the router bit. So I want the bearing to run flush on the base, and then we need to make sure that the cut is deep enough for the material that you're using. In this case it is, so I'm going to lock my router off and we're ready to start. There we go. First one done, and I'll just repeat that for the other feet. I apologise for the noise in the background. That's the air filtration system pumping away because there's a considerable amount of dust inside here. My advice would be to do it outside, but I didn't really have that option. However, very quickly, we've now got 5 identical feet. I was considering doing 6, but I think the smallest sailboard would only need 1 leg. Next step is to connect these to the sailboards and hinge them on. A bit of minor finishing, 240, 320 grit sandpaper on these and on the sailboards, and then we'll get the feet fitted. Now, to help protect the corners, I bought these self-adhesive stick-on rubber mounts to go on each corner, just so that you don't get dinged when they're being carried around. I think these are actually child safety things. I'll just stick these on the corners. I've got some piano hinges. Ideally I would have got longer ones, but I had these in already. On the smaller sides I've only put one, but on this big one I'm going to fit two to each leg. And then I'm just going to make sure that the holes are on the line I've done. I'm going to pre-drill them. Again, being careful not to break through the front of the piece. Make sure you've got suitable screws. You don't want the head too big on the screws, because otherwise the hinge won't open properly, and you don't want the screws too long that they break through the front of the MDF. So the screws I'm using are 4 by 1/2 inch or 3mm by 12mm. I'm going to have the leg line up with the base of the sailboard, and then just push it against the hinge. You could mark it with a pencil. I'm just going to quickly pre-drill. I find if I pre-drill 2 holes and then screw those in, and then I finish the other 2 holes that I've got, just helps hold it in place. And now to repeat that for the other leg. Well, we've got both legs fitted now. I've even put the screws in that I missed when I was filming before. Excellent. Legs done. Well, I'm really pleased with how they turned out. I think they look great once they're painted, and the customer's chosen to paint them themselves. I think they look great. Would I do anything differently? Maybe not, but we'll see as the customer uses them if there's any issues that we can deal with. A nice coat of paint, good choice of colour, and I think they'll look fantastic for a backdrop for photographs. What do you think, Dorothy? Yeah? Join us next time. Don't forget to subscribe and hit that bell if you would. I'll be very grateful, and even like the video, it goes a long way. Cheers guys.